So with that, let's kick off our webinar today, Teens, Trends in Personal Finance. Before I go any further, I'm going to ask Paige to send to everyone that this link to our handout. This is something that you can reference after we're done that has all of the links that to everything that I'll be talking about today. There's a couple pages in this handout, but it is in Google, or excuse me, it's a PDF that you can find on the Making Sense PA website. It'll also be up on the website with the webinar archive as soon as we get the recordings done later this week. So today we'll be talking about today's teens with some statistics and research and information. We'll turn our attention to video games and then social media and finally subscription services. So kicking off with today's teens. Today's teens are born between 2003 and 2008. Some of you, that'll seem like just like it was yesterday. They are referred to as Gen Z. I have a fun little pop quiz here for all of you to think about which of these are older than today's teens. So I've got 8 here. How many of these do you think are older than today's teens? Feel free to comment over there in the comment section. iTunes, Survivor, Grey's Anatomy, the original Kung Fu Panda, the American Idol series, the original Monsters, Inc., Facebook, and oh yes, Tom Brady's career in the NFL. So I love that Tom Brady's older than I am. That's awesome. All right, so in fact, we have, let's see, 5 out of the 8 are older than today's teens. A few of them, depends on the year they were born, it would kind of be in line with them. So if you can believe it or not, Survivor goes back to 2000. iTunes was started in 2001. Also, Tom Brady's NFL career started in 2000 and apparently will never end. So anyhow, kind of fun. So just put that, it puts it in perspective for some of us that have been working, for a long time. Some longer than others, just to think about the kids right now that are roughly ages 13 to 18 and sort of what they've seen and what they've experienced. So they've never known a life without Survivor or Tom Brady or pretty much Monsters, Inc. So here's some, this used to be a survey that the company used to be called Piper Jaffray, and it's one that I know I have reviewed and referenced a lot over the years, but they do an annual survey of teens. This time it was conducted in 2021 in the fall, August to September, and included 10,000 teens with an average age of 15.8. And they provide sort of a top level report as well as some infographics to clients, and then additional information. And really it's meant to sort of support businesses and investors to understand the teenage market. So let's see a little bit of what they found. So 38% of teens at this time were holding a part-time job. That was up from the spring and the fall. Certainly a lot of what we see in this most recent survey, we kind of have to put in the context of the coronavirus and the pandemic. But so some of this is kind of, I think, a little bit maybe skewed depending on where we would normally be. Their self-reported spending was a little over $2,000 a year. That was up 5% and 6% comparatively year after year. Parent contribution to this was about 61%. So the rest of that would be money that was earned and or gifted from others. Clothing is a top spending category at about 22% of wallet share, and it was the #1 priority for the first time since fall 2014. Some might consider that possibly because a lot of kids were going back to school for the first time and maybe refreshing wardrobes, what have you. Areas that saw increased spending: apparel and footwear. This was led by females. Also spending within the beauty category, accessories. Decreased spending, interestingly enough, a little bit less in video games, movies, and personal care. Amazon reigns 52% said it's their top choice of online merchandiser. Shein or Sheen, depending on how you pronounce it, was number 2 at about 9%. You can see some of the brands that have are really popular with teens there, some that may or may not be familiar to those of us who either don't have teens in our household or aren't surrounded by them all the time. Secondhand shopping, 8%. So 51% of teens have purchased secondhand, 62% have sold secondhand, which I thought was really fascinating, that more have sold, or higher percentage have sold their items than have purchased. So an interesting sort of income source and income stream there. Top restaurants, Chick-fil-A, Starbucks, and Chipotle. And we're seeing 15% of teens consuming plant-based meat. Netflix and YouTube, no surprise, lots of daily video consumption. And in terms of social media platforms, this used to be Snapchat, then Instagram, then TikTok, and TikTok and Instagram swapped places this last time. And so when we get to social media in a little bit, that's where we're going to focus. The iPhone is the phone of choice, with 87% of teens owning an iPhone, 88% an iPhone to be their next phone. And if they have a smartwatch, it is Apple's smartwatch is the number 1 brand for the first time of all watches. So which of the following of these is the most popular teen influencer? Left, middle, or right? First of all, does anybody actually know who any of these are? That maybe I should help you out with that. So on the left, we have the influencer or YouTuber known as Mr. Beast. In the middle is Emma Chamberlain, and on the right is David Dobrik. Who do you think it is? Left, middle, or right? Don't all of you tell me at once. Okay, so the answer is actually Emma Chamberlain, even though she has fewer followers than the others in the survey that was done. She actually was considered the most popular of all of the influencers. So Mr. Beast actually with 91.8 didn't even make the cut. My children inform me that he's less of an influencer than he is just a content creator and somebody who shares lots of stuff. So anyhow, sort of interesting to see who's paying attention to, who teens are paying attention to. If you have time and want to go check out any of those accounts, I'd encourage you to do so, just to sort of get into the mind of what kids are looking at now. Payment methods. Cash is still king for teens as a popular top payment method. Lots are also using Apple Pay. PayPal's Venmo ranks number 1 with teens for payment apps. And its Pay in 4 is teens' top buy now, pay later offering. Also, interestingly enough, 9% of teens claim to have used or traded cryptocurrency. 78% of these teens are male. Along those lines, I was on a call the other week with folks from the federal government, and a lot of interest and concern right now in making sure that we have informed investors when it comes to cryptocurrency, NFTs, and the like. The research that's been done right now recently shows that most of the folks that are buying cryptocurrency, for example, rate their self-perceived knowledge level. So they think they know a lot. When they're actually tested and asked questions and try to see, what they really know, it's a lot less than what they think they know, which is kind of a dangerous combination. So interesting what we're seeing in that realm in terms of sort of these emerging financial products. So this is also from that same survey, and again, the link that Paige shared earlier, and that'll be online with the handout, has these resources in them. So next, we're going to turn to video games. Anybody have a gamer in their household and or play any games? Curious if anybody has any favorite video games or sees certain video games or game platforms being used in their households or by the teens in their lives. So when we look at some of the statistics on video games, Nielsen for a while had a sort of a group within them called Super Data. It's now been kind of like taken into another part of the Nielsen platform, but they track a variety of different sources of information about video game spending. And so what I think is really interesting when it comes to video games, this has worldwide spending and then in the United States. So you can see that $21.7 billion was spent on in-game content in 2020. This is just from January to October, so not even a full year, as opposed to 4.9 billion in full game downloads. And then you look at worldwide 11.6 versus 92.6. What this really drives us to is that, it used to be when you bought a video game, well, once upon a time, you actually bought something physical that was inserted into the console, right? Think back to the original, Nintendos or Ataris. That has evolved over time. You can still buy actual video games, if you go to your local store, but a lot of them are just purchased by downloads. And so that downloads, though, is still this just relatively small share of what is being spent on video games. Way more money is being spent actually on in-game content. So we look, for example, at some of the rise in free games like Fortnite, for example, which has no charge to get the game, to download it, put it on your platform, but lots of money being spent within the game on things like skins and power-ups and all sorts of other purchases. So here's some additional data. Again, I'm sharing links to all of these in the handout. So fascinating. It looks like we have here men being almost twice as likely as women to spend over $1,000 in gaming and games. Male average spending is $262 versus female spending of $177. This is for gamers in the 34 to 44 age group, reported higher total spending, but spending decreased in older polled participants, with 50% reporting that they didn't make any game purchases. So again, here is by age group and their responses, the minimum, the average, and then the maximum amount that was being spent. So you can see this is pretty substantial here at the 13 to 17 year range, but then we see the 35 to 44 year range being, being pretty high. Top 10 games for in-game spending: World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, Fortnite, GTA or Grand Theft Auto. You can see Minecraft here comes in at number 10. So these are some of the ones where we see the most in-game purchases being made. So when we look at microtransactions, in-game purchases that unlock specific features or gives the user special abilities, characters, or content. And these can really range anywhere from 99 cents to $99. And they are spending on things like in-game currency. So for example, Fortnite has V-Bucks, cosmetics, things like skins, so that you can look a certain way or have different accessories. Loot crates or bags, these random chance purchases. Other downloadable content, so things that are add-ons like additional maps or missions that you can unlock if you pay for these. Other in-game items, and some offer even like game extensions. Actually, they say that the original microtransaction in a game, if you think back, was putting an extra quarter in for another life or to keep the game going, back when a trip to the arcade was popular, right? So you can think back to wanting to continue that game and sticking another quarter in. Those are what they consider like sort of the original microtransactions, because you're paying in addition to the game. And so it's, some of these, in some cases, you can purchase these things with the in-game currency that you can earn by success in the game. But in other cases, a lot of times it would take you forever, or you would never be able to get enough of the in-game currency to manage to get these. And so adding on with your own money or that of your parents is a really popular thing for many people to do. An example. So here are, this is an article from NPR about Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which came out in 2020. And this is actually sort of a very interesting article where they really talk about like how unnecessary some of the microtransactions were. So here's a quote from this. Do players really want to pay more, in this case around $20 for a set of armor for in-game content when they've already spent $60 on the game itself? And so we've seen some gamers kind of, fighting back, especially as some of these big powerhouse gaming companies have come out with, with new games. This I thought was interesting. This comes from another article. Let's say it would cost you $7.99 to buy 60 gems. You need 13 gems to unlock a lollipop that gives you an extra move in the game. Do you know how much you just spent on that lollipop? And the whole purpose of this, or the whole sort of notion here, is that the way that these things are priced, it makes you have a hard time, like it's not easy mental math. So you might buy something in bulk and then spend a portion of it, and then because of the way the multiples work, you need to get more sooner rather than later, and in the end you don't actually know how much you spent on a specific product so in the game. And so it's sort of just in that sort of mental trickery, if you will, to get people to spend and not really realize how much they're putting in. So what about NFTs? Curious if you can find the raise your hand feature. Raise your hand if you feel like you're comfortable with the concept of what an NFT is. So find that raise your hand feature and raise your hand if you think you're comfortable with the idea. Okay, so very few I'm seeing with hands up. So NFTs are non-fungible tokens, and the basic idea is that it's an image, a digital file that has been certified, that you have ownership of and can then resell for more or less money down the road. I thought there was a great analogy. Actually, this comes in with the social media piece later. I saw a TikTok video explaining how NFTs, like, couldn't you just take a screenshot of the image and then now you have it? And then it was comparing it to, well, you could take a picture of a house. Would you rather own the picture of the house or the house itself? And so even though these items are digital, the certified, the original item is the one that has value. And there's a lot of discussion now about game creators and companies starting to introduce NFTs into video games. And so I think this offers an opportunity for financial educators to make this relevant for students, sort of garner their interest. And again, linking you to some of these articles. So this one, are blockchain integrated games like Axie Infinity the dawn of a new gaming era, or a blip in the market that will vanish as quickly as it began? The question is as contentious as cryptocurrency itself. Talk to blockchain evangelists and they'll say that NFT technology isn't about profit seeking, but digital ownership. So interesting to see sort of the notions behind this. There's also this whole kind of question about whether or not sort of pay to play versus play to earn, whether or not people would be playing video games in order to earn money off of NFTs. So this is the same pitch gaming giants may increasingly making to their players. In-game items will soon be sold as NFTs, which, unlike microtransactions of the past, can be traded for other digital goods or sold to other players for money. So this is the potential future of gaming, if you will. So I'm equating it to the Beanie Baby craze. Anybody remember Beanie Babies and people who went crazy collecting Beanie Babies, not knowing if those would increase in value or not? As it so happened with Beanie Babies, they ended up not becoming the end-all be-all investment. This does remind me of a great book from the Berenstain Bears, the Mad Mad Toy Craze. You'll see here, we have bears furry babies on the inside. When little bears want the same toys as their friends, they may hook into a craze that just never ends. It's a great book and goes back to that notion of using children's literature like we did in a recent session to be able to spark interest or conversation in a topic. So just something to think about. Here's another article. What are NFTs in video games? 9 publishers on the future of the technology. So if you have high school students in particular, a lot of gamers in your class, this might be something interesting for them to pursue or investigate. This is another, sort of not warm and fuzzy outlook on this one. The absurd false scarcity that drives the price of NFTs applied to games could create a nightmare for players that makes loot box and battle pass debates look like basking in warm sun on the beach. So a possible sort of discussion or debate that could be had with some of your students on this topic. So again, this one's imagine owning some Assassin's Creed gear on the blockchain that you can show off in online mode. Imagine playing a first shooter where your skin is truly unique and not just a bunch of saw puppets running around. Imagine being psychologically manipulated into thinking any of this nonsense is good at all. Is it possible? Yes. Let's hope we don't go in the direction. So lots of people, again, not looking forward to this idea. So when it comes to this topic, I put together some discussion questions that you could use in class. These are in the handout itself. So these are some different things that you could get students thinking, like how is playing video games influence the way you spend money? Do you budget and or plan for the spending that you do? How might it influence your spending in the future? Thinking ahead to your budget as an adult, how much money do you anticipate spending on gaming? How will you control your gaming spending? So different ways that you can kind of address this. And then some additional questions here on video games themselves. So in addition to this, I put together some choice boards, and I did these in 2 different formats. So linked in the handout is a link to this one that is in Google Slides, and all of the ones that I put together, just so that you're familiar with them. When you go to them, there's an overlay on each of these that if you're in presentation mode, will link to that slide. So if you were to go and try and edit these, all you have to do is move these overlays and you can edit the content and make these work for you. So I didn't do anything that was platform specific, like so none of these say create a Flipgrid or what have you. You can adjust these and make them your own, or just provide complete student choice in how students would do any of these, or just take 1 or 2 of these and make them into a full-blown activity separate from the choice board. So again, each of these has their own page in the slides, or I also put these together in just a really simple Google Doc. So again, you can use those as you like. Moving on to our next our topic, influencer or educator. And this is where I'm going to welcome my daughter, Audrey, actually, to the line. So Audrey, you want to go ahead and unmute. As she's doing that, 35% of teens report learning about personal finance on social media. So as I mentioned before, I have 2 teenagers at home. Audrey is 13 and my son is 16, and it's interesting to see how much time they're on social media, but also the kinds of things that they can access there as well. This was an interesting statistic. 45% of teens were more interested in investing due to social media attention on GameStop, which obviously was a huge, sort of piqued a lot of people's interest a while ago. So we're going to take a look at these 3 different platforms, or actually we're going to focus here on the top 2. And as I mentioned, I thought it might be helpful to bring in my literally in-house expert. So Audrey, welcome. It's great to have you.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Awesome. So we're going to start off with TikTok, which, as we mentioned before, is now the number 2 sort of social media platform, if you will. Some people refer to the financial information on TikTok as hashtag FinTalk, Money Talk, or Stock Talk. So these give you some hashtags to start taking a look at. But let's kick off with looking at this account. So this is from John E. Finance. Audrey, when you're a lot more savvy and familiar with TikTok, so tell me, what am I looking at here with the number of followers? Is this 1.2 million pretty impressive?
Yeah, I definitely say that anyone who has over 1 million followers is pretty impressive because it shows that there's a lot of people engaged and learning things from its content.
Awesome. So let me play, let's play this one example. This one's real short.
Hey Dad, how much money do you make?
That's none of your business, son.
Oh, okay. Hey Mom, how much is our house worth? The value of our home comes from within. Yeah, okay. Yes sir, just got a promotion. Cheers to that, man. How much are you making now?
It's really none of your business.
Oh, my bad.
So how did you end up in all this debt?
I don't know. I just never talked about money.
All right, so Audrey, what do you think about that one?
This is a really good example. I can see it being used to get students to discuss whether or not money is talked about in their families. It also definitely shows the consequences of not having any money conversations.
Awesome. So as we think about some of these personal finance accounts and their use with educators, one way to use them is actually in the classroom to spark discussion, like Audrey just mentioned, which I think is great. And as this one points out, super short. So here's another a quote from this this influencer. Posting content is a lot like investing. The best time to start was 20 years ago. The second best time to start is today. So Audrey, what do you think about that one?
I think this one definitely puts investing into a context that me and people my age can relate to.
Yeah, definitely. So let's look at this one. Here's another influencer or content creator. So this one and the one before, they they have these different titles on them. What's up with these, and what does that say to you, Audrey?
These are pretty common on educational videos. It's easy for content creators to embed them into the thumbnail, which is what you're seeing, but they don't actually show up when you're scrolling. So if one of these videos pops up in my feed, I don't actually see the title. I only really see the title whenever I'm looking at his profile.
Okay, awesome. So this is super helpful when we're looking at the overall profile, but from what you're telling me, if I were just, doing my scroll of videos like of people that I follow or in the For You or whatever on TikTok, I'm not going to see them.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. So Inspired Budget has a little bit of a different look and feel to some of these videos. Let's take a look at this post here.
What is value-based budgeting? I'm glad you asked. Value-based budgeting is when you spend money on what you value most in life. That could be travel, entertainment like concerts or sports games, experiences with your family, or even your favorite pet. This means you have to ask yourself some tough questions. Questions like, what are my priorities? And what am I willing to cut out of my spending? The good news is that this process can help you actually love budgeting altogether.
So Audrey, what do you think about this one?
I really like the style and the approach. I think it introduces some nice vocabulary if you were to be starting a unit, and it could really introduce the concept to a class.
Awesome. So now here's another one. I see this. So if I go actually to their profile, I wouldn't see this if I were just scrolling again, but I see over here it says sign up for Stash. Now I know that Stash is like a product or a service, a company. Would you see that if you were just scrolling through here, Audrey?
No, like you said, you wouldn't see that unless you were looking at his profile. And my opinion is that I don't think it would necessarily raise any red flags. I think that a lot of content creators and influencers have sponsorships from companies that are in their field of education. And I'd know then that if he talked about that company in a video that he's getting compensated to do it. TikTok would also market any videos that he talks about or discusses that company with a hashtag ad.
Oh, awesome. So it's called out. It's not like a super secret kind of thing. And you're like totally teaching me stuff and all of this, by the way. All of the hashtag ad thing, I never knew exactly what that was for. So, I mean, I knew it was an ad, but I didn't know who put it there. So what about this account? Over here, it looks like they're offering some course. So if I go and click on that link, what is this that I'm seeing here?
So if you've ever heard of what's like a link tree, that's an example of what that could be. Basically, it's like a tree of links with different branches with all of these different links for people. You can see his class up top. It looks like he also has some sponsors down below, some different sponsorships, but he also has a Discord group in the middle. I don't think you want me getting into Discord right now.
Yeah, that's a whole nother webinar, I think. But a phrase we hear in our house as well. So anyhow, maybe another webinar some other time on that one. So here's another one, Humphrey Talks. This one looks like he's got a lot of followers and likes on this one.
And also notice he also seems to have a link tree, or at least a link. And I'm assuming it's a link tree since it says my YouTube and more. And quite a few people use this because you can only have 80 characters in your bio, which is where this is placed. So using a link tree is a really nice way to put all of your sponsorships or all of your different platforms in one space without running out of room.
You know, this is starting to make sense for me now, because a lot of times I hear people say like link in my bio, link in the bio. And now I understand that I actually need to click on that and see more stuff. So, and by the way, I totally went and looked at this almond milk one. Audrey, you and I are going to have a chat about that one later. We're drinking a lot more almond milk in this household for Audrey's brother. So, all right, off topic, but here's 4 other videos. These are all ones from this creator. So I love this one. This one has to do with that sort of notion. A lot of you may be familiar with sort of graphing the difference between saving now and starting to save now and saving later. So let's look at this one real quick.
I just got a part-time job. I'm gonna start investing $200 a month, and you should too. I'm good. I got better things to do. I'll do that later.
10 years later.
Hey, happy birthday. Thanks, man. I'm 30 now. I guess I'll start this investing thing. To catch up, I'll invest more than you at $250 a month. Awesome, but I'm gonna stick with $200 a month. It's been working great so far.
Retirement age.
I'm so glad we started investing, man. My $250 a month is now worth $657K with returns. How'd you do? Not bad. I'm at 1.173 million. How do you have almost more than double? I contributed more than you for almost 30 years. Even though we roughly contributed the same over time, that 10-year head start I had really compounded my returns. I should have started earlier.
All right, I think that one's funny. And again, sort of a lot of us have seen those like graphs, one starts and has a smaller amount, the other one starts later and puts in more actually in total, but by the end, the other one is much higher. And so that tells that same story, and you could do that in conjunction with those traditional graphs showing compound interest, but in a way that's engaging, I think, for teens. This other one I'm going to show you has to do with a concept that is very familiar to actually what our book study is going to be on, which is making numbers that we use in personal finance have some meaning. So that making numbers count book study, this goes hand in hand with that
The
one.
scale of $1 billion is really crazy. So let's say 1 grain of rice is equivalent to 100K, and 10 grains of rice would be then 1 million. Well, how much is 1 billion? So my Saturday night consisted of counting 10,000 grains of rice one by one, just to show you guys how much $1 billion is. Of course I filmed it, and of course I time-lapsed it, and this is playing at, I don't even know, God knows how fast it's playing at, but. So now I'm proud to present to you the results. That is $1 billion, where each grain of rice is worth 100K. Look how much rice this is, guys. That's crazy. I just bought you like a Lamborghini right here, and I didn't even notice it was gone. Here's a $5 million house in California. And oh, look, I still have all this money.
All right, so that's just a little bit of plug. I won't make anybody, I promise nobody in the book club will have, or book study will have to count grains of rice. But anyhow, so as a little bit of an aside, I wanted to share with you, I know that if you want to use these in your classroom and engage students in a way that is meaningful and something that they'll gain their interest, to do this in your classes, there's a couple of different options. So one, first of all, if you aren't aware, you don't actually have to have a TikTok account to access TikTok. You can get to it just through the TikTok website. You can search accounts there. You don't have to log in. You can see who those, you can access those those link trees like Audrey was talking about. If you go in and play an actual video, you can then right click on it. And I like to use open video in new tab. That gets rid of all the sort of the extra stuff and puts it just on this sort of blank screen with just that. So if you're going to use this, you could also link then to this link if you were to put it, say, in Google Classroom, or just to show it in your class. I know for a lot of people, TikTok might be blocked by your school servers. So I like to use my phone when I'm doing this. So you'll see this is me on TikTok on my phone. In this case, I do have the app. Speaking of which, we have a Making Sense PA account now on TikTok, thanks to the help of my daughter. And we're following a bunch of these accounts. So if you find Making Sense PA on TikTok, you can see who we're following and start following them yourselves. But you would click on this little share arrow down here. And from there, then you get to this this screen where it's sort of this send to, but instead of sending it, you can either copy the link there, or you can save the video. And that's what I've done here with this presentation, is I actually saved the account, go into other, and then I can actually just airdrop it to my my computer, because I work off of a Mac and an iPhone, or I can save the video. It'll put it into my camera roll, and then I can share it from there. Okay, enough about TikTok. Let's move on to Instagram. We talked about earlier that Instagram is now the third most popular social media platform. Number one was Snapchat. So Audrey, why are we not looking at Snapchat?
Because Snapchat is really just for communicating and sharing things with your friends or your family. And you can't really subscribe or like follow people.
Right. So we're not going to be creating accounts on Snapchat. And it's not really where teens go to learn stuff or what have you. So we're going to focus here on Instagram now to sort of round these out. Now, on Instagram, I might see some of the same videos that I saw from people over on TikTok, right?
Yeah, that's correct. A lot of content creators will post the same or similar videos to multiple different platforms. For example, like TikTok, Insta, and YouTube tend to go hand in hand. The big difference is that you only really get static images like these on the screen on Instagram.
Okay, so let's take a look at these. These come from 3 different content creators, influencers, what have you. So this one I found was really kind of inspirational from the everyday millennial about, kind of just getting started with investing and making money. This one I loved. I talked about, if you were on the last webinar about reading books, one of the reasons that I like reading some is just to get examples of other ways to explain different concepts. People will use different analogies that I haven't thought about. And this is an example of that for dollar cost averaging, which I think is great. This one is another cool one for sparking discussion. You could have students say, okay, well, what do you think is the difference between being on a budget and being cheap? Do you think they're the same thing, or do you think they're different? And so here's one person's take. Do you agree, disagree? What are your thoughts? This one I loved because it really promotes a lot of action, or what have you. And so one of the things that you can do with your students, I'm going to share with you some resources here in a minute, but encourage them or get them thinking about whether or not they would follow social media accounts focused on personal finance as a way to just sort of keep these things top of mind. If this sort of content starts popping up in their social media feeds, as long as the content is good and accurate, it may be beneficial. Whether or not it's good and accurate can sometimes be questionable. So I'm going to thank Audrey now for joining me. I've joked with her before that maybe we should start some kind of joint mother-daughter social media profile. So when I was doing my research for this, I came across, I've been familiar with FinCon for a while, but Money Nerds Unite, maybe if I take her to Florida, I can convince her to do that. But because seriously, there's a whole community of FinCon, social media and other content creators devoted to this. So Audrey, what do you think?
Didn't know there was a trip to Orlando in this for me. That could be a game changer. And you're welcome. This was fun.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate your joining us and for your expertise on this. I couldn't have put this one together without you.
Yep.
So speaking of the content that I put together, here are some discussion questions that you could use with students, including how do you know if an influencer is providing sound financial advice? Does it matter if they're earning money from this? Here is another choice board, again, done both in slides and in a Google Doc. So next, we're going to move on, spend the last few minutes that we have here together on subscription services. So I wanted you guys to think for a second and basically spam the chat, if you will, with what subscription services can you think of that you currently use? So I'm going to give you a second to think through what are some things. Just start, you can type in one, hit enter, type in another one, hit enter, try and spam me with as many of different subscription services that you can think of. So Audrey, if you want to join in too, you're welcome to for our household. All right, HelloFresh, a meal service one. What's another one? Hulu. Yep, Netflix, HBO Max, Amazon Prime. Keep them coming. What other ones do you have? BarkBox, good one. Disney Plus, Paramount Plus. So none of those are in my life. Good for you. Ooh, The Farmer's Dog. That's one I haven't heard of before. I'm gonna have to research that one. Apple TV Plus. Somebody says I'm old. I still get 3 magazines. Yep. I still like magazines. Stitch Fix. Okay. Yep. All right, so there's a lot of different subscription services out there. I'm providing you with some links to Misfit Markets. Yep, I haven't tried that. I've heard good things about it. Here is a list of different categories, and this comes from some research that I'm sharing with you in the handout, but these are just examples of categories and then some of the companies that are providing these. So we can think about too our mobile phone services being a subscription, music streaming, if anybody's using things like Spotify or Pandora or XM or Sirius in their cars, for example. Maybe you have a wellness app like Headspace, or somebody mentioned Stitch Fix. There's a bunch of different ones like that. We're going to talk about it again in a minute, but a connection between an earlier topic, there are a bunch of gaming subscriptions now, or dating apps that people are paying for, or cloud storage, like maybe you pay for extra iCloud service or Google Drive service storage, or Dropbox. Perhaps you are using Kindle or Audible for reading, or beauty ones like Dollar Shave Club or Birchbox or Ipsy. So many different things out there. And this is kind of like a whole new way of thinking about things that are being spent on a monthly basis that a lot of people didn't think about in the past. So let's take a look at, sort of where this has gone, and some of the data on this. So this comes from West Monroe from last year. Subscription services continue to gain wallet share from consumers. The average monthly spend on subscription services is $273, up from $237 in 2018. So that equates to an additional $430 a year. Consumers are less aware of their spending. And so I think that one is a really interesting piece. And then subscription services are becoming ingrained in daily life. So things like mobile phones, top of mind for consumers. But in 2021, the opposite is true and seem to have been relegated to a background utility role in people's minds. So these are the most common, what subscription services do consumers use the most, and what do they pay? And so here we're seeing a lot of people use a mobile phone service or pay for Wi-Fi at home, followed by TV or movie services. About 48% subscribe to Amazon Prime, although that was the most expensive of all of them. And that one actually is a little bit of a misnomer, I think, here, not really fair, because that's a one-time expense. That's the one piece, the one issue I have with this this report, because that's a 1 year as opposed to the rest of these being monthly. But lots of other ones we didn't mention before, like digital newspapers and magazines. So I subscribe to several newspaper sources or news sources, for example, so that I can read them on my phone and not have to worry about getting home delivery, or I can read them anytime and access anything that I see a link to. So again, an increase here of about 15% over the last 3 years. This one I think is really interesting. So when we think about, like, if you were to ask somebody, how much do you think you spend each month on subscriptions? First guess for a lot of people, $62 a month. Second guess, getting closer, 96 month, 96 a month. And then if they actually, the actual amount was 3.4 times the amount that people guessed that they spent. And this is with providing them with those categories. So it's pretty substantial. How much do consumers underestimate by? You know, a lot of people were really off. And so, you know, just kind of interesting. What services are top of mind? So we see, you know, TV and movie, the stuff that we use, music streaming, the things that we use all the time. And then down here with some of those things that kind of runs in the background, like your Wi-Fi, maybe identity protection services, cloud storage, mobile phone service, less aware. This is an interesting one for young, most popular music platforms used by Americans. So with a breakdown as well by age. And then back to the same source, I think this one is an interesting one as to how hooked are people, and if they are hooked, are they happy about it? So a lot of people seem to be very happily hooked on their book services, not as much happily hooked on, say, a wellness app or a children's subscription, but it gets even farther down. So identity protection services aren't making very many people happy. The interesting things are these unhappy, not hooked. So basically, if you still have them, you know, why do you, you know, they're not making you happy, you're not, you know, excited about them, why do you still have them? So something, you know, for people to consider. This is an interesting one from just recently. Amazon raised their price on Prime membership. So it's gone up now to $139 a year or $14.99 a month. And I thought this was this is from one of those folks that we saw earlier. So just kind of an interesting one, an interesting take.
Hey Amazon, your Q4 sales were up 9% to 137.4 billion, but it missed expectations of 137.6 billion. Huh, that's no good. Could we squeeze more efficiency from our fulfillment centers? I think they already work 24/7. So is that a no? I mean... better idea. All Prime members must pay us more monies. Increase prices by $20. Oh, you can just do that? What happens if they leave? We're Amazon. We can do anything. Besides, where are they gonna go? Whoa, stock price is up 14%.
Yeah, so there's an example of what happened, right? So you see that rise in price, and it happens every time we turn around. If you pay attention, and that's another thing, a lot of folks don't pay attention to those increases. So here's an example of Netflix. This goes back to 2011. For some of theirs, they started off with just one package, then they changed to the different types of packages, and then you can see it's now gone up to $19.99 a month, whereas some of us who've been subscribing for a long time sort of still have it in their mental accounting, which if you participated in our dollars and cents book study or have done anything with behavioral finance, you know that a mental accounting can sort of influence the way we think about and spend our money. So a lot of people just sort of have it still pegged in their mind as being that like $10.99 or $12.99 expense, and it could very well now be a $20 a month, which makes a big difference. So looking at and comparing these, I think is fascinating. So here's the information actually from the Netflix page, where you could even have students take a look at some of these and say, okay, well, you know, which one of these does a family really need? You know, could spark an interesting conversations between wants versus needs, and what have you. So I mentioned video game subscriptions. About half of all gamers and 3 in 4 of millennial gamers say they use subscription game services. So these are things like those available from Xbox or from PlayStation, where you get access to a certain number of video games every month, and you don't have to pay then to download those. So you can see really popular amongst folks. And this breaks down PC gamers versus console gamers, Gen Z versus millennials versus Gen X and boomers that are playing. And again, this is just of people who say they game. So this one says avid gamers are respondents who play at least 7 hours of video games in an average week. Respondents could select all options that apply to them. So you could be an avid gamer who primarily plays on a console and be in Gen X, for example. And then this is just a current sample of how much each of these cost right now. So some of these are less popular, like the Apple Arcade and Amazon Luna. Definitely more popular ones like Microsoft Xbox Game Pass. These are all monthly charges versus some of these that are per year. So if you have students that are gaming, this is something that's a very likely expense that they're either paying themselves or convincing somebody in their lives to pay for. So here are some discussion questions. Is it easier to think about a monthly expense rather than a yearly one? How will you know when you are spending too much? What amount of an increase are you okay paying? How will you decide? Are you actually saving money? So for example, like HelloFresh or one of those services, or the Misfit Market, you have to examine some of those and think, are you saving money? What are you getting from this subscription service? Maybe there's some other added value. It doesn't have to necessarily be that you're saving money, but you enjoy it, or maybe it's something else. Is there a less expensive option? So for example, maybe your family could really get by with that lower grade, or maybe kids have moved out of the house, for example, and you don't need to have as many simultaneous streams as provided on a previous plan. So again, here is a choice board focused on subscription services. So each one of these then has a little bit more detail. So for example, worth the price. Examine the meal plans of a meal delivery service, the kind where they send the ingredients and you prepare the meal at home. Research the cost of the ingredients if you were to buy them from the store, which is the better deal. If the service is more, is it worth it for the time savings and potential for reduced waste? So maybe you don't actually need to have an entire bottle of some seasoning or what have you that you're only going to use for that recipe. And so, maybe you would just have a waste, something going to waste. So again, that's just one of the options here on that choice board. So that wraps us up for our time together focused on teens, trends, and personal finance. I appreciate all of you joining us. Thank you again to Audrey for her participation in this. We certainly hope to see you back on a future webinar.